you're always Johnny on the spot. You come and help us and kind of let us know what law enforcement is thinking, trying to determine when they are pursuing a suspect. Tell us a little bit about when you're pursuing a motorcycle.
As long as you don't hate on cops, yeah.
You know, we don't have a lot of the thing about those types of pursuits.
I guess you're right, Ed. Some people do hate on them, right? They probably don't like the stream. Samuel Jackson, what's Sunday, buddy? What's going on Sunday?
Trying to pursue the motorcycle.
Just the name, yeah. I'm shortening it.
I'm assuming it's a male. They're looking over his shoulder.
Live pursuit.
Again, that just seems
right now?
kind of incredible because you don't lose your balance when you're looking behind you. And if this motorcycle was in fact stolen, they obviously know how to drive a motorcycle because they're not the easiest things to maneuver as well.
No, not at all.
Wait, are you live, Nick? I didn't see you live this morning.
About driving the motorcycle, weaving in and out of traffic, going at the high rate of speed. That will make the assumption he is going at. What law enforcement is going to do is just go back into tracking mode, hopefully have a helicopter that can monitor and get the license plate of the motorcycle and wait for the terminus, the end of this chase, when this guy goes home.
Yeah, and it's not as though, Mark, you can sort of talk to the person. You know, many times law enforcement, they'll be able to contact the person if they have an idea who that suspect is. They'll be able to contact the person and talk to them and negotiate with them to try to pull over and give up. But Bruce, what kind of tools do law enforcement have to try to negotiate with this pursuit suspect?
Well, the one thing you lose is pit maneuvers, spike strips. Those things are now out of play because the motorcyclist is just driving at such a high rate of speed. So all you really can do is just kind of sit back and monitor. Hopefully this person slows down and is not driving like we've seen from Air 7 HD, wrong side of the road, center medium, and weaving in and out of traffic.
And Bruce, one thing to point out here is that it's hard to tell, but he has not come to a stop at any intersection. So I got to assume that he's been blowing through some red lights. This looks like this would be another, and he may make a right there on Allen. Very familiar with this area. This is going to come down to, going to pass Las Lunas and then Villa Street and right back towards the 210 freeway here on the east side of Pasadena. But he seems to be just blowing through every single intersection that he comes to right here. And this is, I think, going to be Villa Street.
Yeah, East Villa Street, Mark. And again, I'm sort of wondering, Bruce, you can answer the question, what would be a better location for this pursuit suspect? City streets or the freeway? We know the 210 freeway, that's a pretty wide open freeway. That's one of those freeways that it rarely gets jammed up.
You know, the freeway is obviously easier because you don't have the intersections, the blind driveways where people may pull out. You can kind of see what's in front of you and where you're going. Obviously, the speeds are a little higher on the freeway, but on surface streets, it's just so inherently dangerous. And as a watch commander, I can guarantee that they've canceled the pursuit, and now they're just saying, you know what, we're going to monitor via helicopter. We'll put it out as much as we can, but I don't want units involved in this.
Yeah, this is really concerning. Knowing that it's on those surface streets. This is going to be coming up to Altadena Drive. This is going to be his next intersection here on Villa Street. He just passed a fire station on his right, and then this is the corner of Altadena Drive. This would take him right back to the 210 freeway. We'll have to see if he stays on surface streets or gets right back on.
Yeah, I'm again
on surface streets, so this is going to take him a little bit further south of the freeway now.
Yeah, actually, Mark, I was saying before that it does seem like the 210 usually is pretty clear, but it has some traffic on it right now. Again, we're seeing this driver on North Altadena Drive. Bruce, if the watch commander decides that this pursuit is just too dangerous to continue and they call off the pursuit, why does it seem like this motorcyclist is still driving at erratic speeds and fashion?
You know, it's an interesting question because having talked to suspects that I've chased or been involved in as a watch commander, they just feel that they're trying to get away. Trying to get away from what at that time? It was something in their mind that said, hey, I'm being chased. But you're not being chased anymore. So it's just the freedom and wanting of the freedom, I guess.
Yeah, and again, we see this suspect just kind of winding through this area. But now I'm going to see him when you see big, large intersections, you sort of hold your breath a little bit. But again, this area you have a lot of freedom on these roads. There's not a lot of congestion right now.
And now back eastbound on Colorado. So essentially from when we first came on air, he's kind of made a big loop. If he stays in this direction, he would go right back, roughly, 3 to 4 miles away, but back to where he was essentially when we came on air here with this breaking coverage. Again, we are dipping in here to ABC7 and streaming live with this motorcycle pursuit that started, at least when we caught on to it, that was in like the La Crescenta area and now right in the heart of Pasadena. And Colleen, if he continues straight here, it's going to go right into Old Town Pasadena. Lots of shoppers. You were mentioning that it looks pretty quiet right now.
Yeah.
Anytime that you go into Old Town Pasadena, you're going to have more cars, more people walking around. They have those intersections that are like the four-way cross.
Right.
So that is super concerning. Would
Plus
have come
it's
up.
lunchtime as well.
Yeah,
We know
exactly.
that some cities do a really great job with lunches, and Pasadena is one of those cities, and it gets very busy over the lunchtime hour. And again, people are not necessarily knowing that there is a pursuit taking place because you do not see any law enforcement walking. You see somebody walking in front, but again, you see this person now, they're stopping. So it almost looks like they're now trying to follow the rules of the road. Bruce, again, this person is still taking some risks.
Oh, yeah, definitely they are. And a question people might ask is, well, why not have some motorcycle officers chase him that they can weave in and out of traffic? Well, having a motor officer in a pursuit is just so inherently dangerous for that motorcycle officer that most times they're not even allowed to be in the pursuit.
Yeah, it seems like I would agree too, Mark.
Right here, just passing Pasadena City College on the lower side of your screen. So he's passing a lot of landmarks that people are going to be familiar with here in Pasadena. Of course, you say Colorado Boulevard, there's nothing more central than that. And from what we've seen, he's willing to do anything to get away. That being said, again, sorry if this is reiterating, now in tracking mode, only the chopper from Pasadena Police now tracking this motorcycle. Now, that being said, that means there's not going to be an officer right behind this guy, but they're going to know where he is. They're still following him. They want to get him, but they don't want to escalate the situation. Bruce, is that a fair assessment that, they don't want those lights and sirens right behind the guy to agitate him?
Yeah, Mark, that is 100% true statement because the more you put pressure on this driver, we've already seen what he's doing not being chased. If he now were to see multiple units behind him with lights and siren, that may pressure him into even doing more unsafe maneuvers.
Yeah, and again, I'm watching this motorcycle rider and, going right in between cars and just kind of going through the intersections. I'm not quite sure if that was a red light or if it was a green one. But again, I'm thinking this, as many of us know this area, I'm thinking this motorcycle rider does not necessarily know this area because they're just driving in such an unusual manner. It looks like, are they about to get onto a freeway, or is this... Mark, is this,
that was
like the freeway
on-ramp
to the 210?
Yep, back on the 210 freeway. He got on there at Maple Street, and he's back on the freeway. And again, Bruce, weigh those options for us when it comes to a pursuit, especially with a motorcycle. Would you prefer it being on a freeway versus city streets, surface streets?
Personally, as a watch commander, I would feel more comfortable in a pursuit on the freeway, because it's basically one direction,
sure,
multiple lanes, but traffic is pretty stagnant, meaning you're not going to have vehicles turning in front of you or trying to merge.
I know.
So in that case, a freeway would work.
It always jams up right here at Lake Avenue. There's the junction where the 210 continues onto the 210, but it's it's more like an interchange because it goes up north towards La Cañada and La Crescenta. So there's always a jam up right here. So the traffic's slowing down a bit, especially on the 2 to 3 right lanes. And he's staying in those lanes right now. Makes you wonder, is he going to go back onto the 210 further westbound, which would take him up to La Cañada, just passing Lake Avenue right there. If he stays to the left of this coming interchange, it would then transfer on to the 134 westbound, come right back into Eagle Rock and Glendale.
Right, and then again, Bruce, I don't know how, I'm sure you probably have a better understanding. I know law enforcement, they certainly can talk through their earpieces and helmets, but I don't think, are a lot of helmets, you know, just normal civilian helmets? Because this person does have a helmet. So if they did steal this motorcycle, maybe the helmet was left on it with the keys. I mean, a lot of people, it's just a crime of opportunity. But this suspect certainly knows how to shift the gears. You can watch him. It's somewhat tricky to know how to ride a motorcycle if you haven't never driven one. It's not quite so easy where you just start up the motorcycle. It's not like a moped, right, Bruce?
No, that's correct, Colleen. I mean, when you steal a car, it's pretty easy. Put on the gas, put on the brake, turn the steering wheel, drive. But a motorcycle is a lot more difficult to do. And what's unique about this motorcycle is there's an additional helmet on the bike, which means we believe there's probably a little more than just a stolen motorcycle in this case.
Yeah. Again, we're trying to effort all those details. As you know, whenever there's a pursuit happening and we're trying to call the law enforcement jurisdiction who's behind it, they're so busy, and then we don't get a lot of updates. But we certainly will update the details as soon as we find out, because it's sort of like a little bit of a drip, like a faucet. There's a drip information. And again, as we find out more, we certainly share it with you.
Getting word here that CHP is now joining the chase here shortly is the latest update that we have, and that they are sending their chopper and ground units. So initially we had Pasadena PD, their chopper involved in this pursuit, at least in tracking mode. Now California Highway Patrol, according to our desk, going to be getting involved in this pursuit and maybe re-engaging Bruce with ground units. And that's something that we do see from time to time. It passes jurisdictions. You have different agencies joining in. Is that the case?
Yeah, in this case, you're on the freeway now, and CHP is the primary agency for the freeways. And so if there's a pursuit on the freeway or a pursuit suspect, CHP will engage. They have some different rules of engagement, and we're going to see some units probably behind this guy very, very shortly.
I'm also wondering, Bruce, you know, the CHP just launched a whole new effort to reduce reckless driving on our freeways. And I've been seeing them, these new Dodge Durangos. They're very, but they're not doing one of their Dodges. They're doing one of their true black and white. So
that's
now the
Glendale
suspect
right there.
knows.
That was Glendale police that was pursuing, which does make sense because when we came on air, La Crescenta is part of Glendale, and so that may have been one of the initial officers.
Yeah, well, you know, the CHP, they get thousands of phone calls a day on reckless drivers. So again, it leads you to believe that they're going to try to do anything they can to keep the roads safe. I drive quite a bit, and I have been seeing those Durangos, and they really are very low profile. You don't realize it's a law enforcement vehicle until you really look at it and you go, oh, that's one of those new CHP.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have quite a few that they're sending out on the road. And again, Mark, you were talking about it, Glendale Police. So it is interesting, Bruce. I always find it interesting, you know, some jurisdictions, they don't play well with others, the CHP and, you know, not every police department, they don't have always the best relationship. But through the years, it does seem like everyone has been starting to fall on the same page where they're better as a team. Would you agree?
I think we'll call it the cohesiveness of the unit, of the agencies, has gotten much better. You know, they all have mutual aid where they help each other out. And at the end of the day, the job is for the safety of the public, to reduce crime, to reduce these type of incidents. So, yeah, they are playing much better in the sandbox.
Yeah.
Right now on the 134, we talked about his options a while ago. He just passed through the Eagle Rock area. There's been no exit here, kind of between Figueroa and Harvey. There's not really any options to get off the freeway. So right now on the 134 westbound, I believe right there to the right would have been an option to take the 2 freeway on his right, and he is staying here on the 134. This is going to take him right into the heart of Glendale. New information just coming in that the Glendale PD chopper now asking CHP to take over the pursuit. We can tell you may be able to tell there. There are no plates on the motorcycle. And an update here for perhaps why they're following this guy. Initial information was potentially that it was stolen.
Mark, this is one of those undercover.
Oh, right there, you're right.
There.
Black
So-
SUV.
Either we're just passing it or this is it right here. So we're right by the 2 freeway, and I believe that actually is the borderline. So we're definitely in Glendale. There is no doubt about that. These speeds continuing about just, now we're starting to see some higher numbers. There's a lot less traffic out there, but you can see this rider kind of posturing, doing that, like go, 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 like he's egging on a horse. Looks like we're getting over. This might be an attempt for an off-ramp, but at these high speeds, I just worry about that rider more than anything else. There seems to be a black vehicle very close behind it, and I think that is an unmarked law enforcement, or it is marked. You can see some flashing lights right there. So it's a difficult call for law enforcement. They don't want to see that rider injured, and they don't want to push that rider past his skill set. But they definitely want to bring this thing to an end, and they definitely are making themselves known. That's a really sharp turn. This is what I'm talking about. This is not an experienced rider. That is not an experienced rider. And you can see the motorcycle, the law enforcement just trying to get up close to it, just to kind of just maybe bump it just a little bit, especially when it's going slow. Wrong side of the road right now. Hopefully it gets back onto the right side of the road. But that move right there, that told me all I needed to know. This is definitely not an experienced rider, which makes this so much more dangerous for that person.
Yeah, in all scenarios, what we're looking at here is the driver of that motorcycle, the rider there, certainly at a disadvantage when it comes to any type of safety precaution, because as you know, look how exposed that person is riding a motorcycle or this type of stump bike. Any collision, any fall, any kind of action, with someone else, that person is going to get hurt. There's no doubt about it, because anyone else in a vehicle or otherwise would be protected, right, by a car. But in this case, that rider is so exposed, going so fast, and now driving very recklessly because they don't really know how to control that motorbike, and clearly going on residential streets right now is very dangerous.
And and you saw that too, just a little bit of that wiggle in that rear wheel. Every time that something like any move that this person is making, besides even in the straight lines, I am really, really concerned for that rider's safety, and of course the public as well. That a heavy motor that's a couple 100 pounds moving along at even 40, 50 miles an hour definitely could injure somebody even in a vehicle, or take their life if it's a pedestrian. So this is definitely very dangerous for everybody involved. And again, we're probably never going to hear where or how this motorcycle came into this rider's possession, but it is definitely a very dangerous situation. Law enforcement, now this is going to be Glendale, I really don't know how they handle things like this or what their policies are, but that rider clearly not very familiar with riding a motorcycle, especially not one with that kind of power. And you can see that there are people in the roadway right there making these turns. I'm not sure if he knows where he's going or just picking random streets out here, because we're in very residential neighborhoods, and I'm keeping an eye out. There was actually a car backing out in this vehicle, and now we're coming up on a busy street, and those right turns, probably the best thing he could do. But that black vehicle that we see every now and then in the shot behind it, that is definitely law enforcement, and that officer doing what he can to keep the public safe and to bring this thing to an end safely. How he's going to do that, or she, we don't know. Hopefully this person is going to either run out of steam, run out of gas, or just make the wise decision like, okay, this is enough, I'm just going to stop.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I'm no expert on motorcycles or these type of motorbikes, how big the gas tank is on this, or perhaps if it's a kind of hybrid situation, but clearly less gas in the tank than a car, so how long can this motorist go for?
Oh, these bikes can go for a while if that thing has a full tank of gas or even 5 gallons in there. But look at how jerky the motions are. This is a rider that's not familiar with the gear pattern, not familiar with how to drive with clutch, and it really truly scares me. I know you hear a little chuckle in my voice, but that's the only thing I can do to calm myself. I'm just really worried that this is going to end poorly, or at least with some sort of injury. Coming underneath us right there, Skyfox is going to do a beautiful pirouette. Look at that, and you can see some of the other traffic as we did that wider shot. So he is not getting, dangerously close, yes, but desperately close, no. He seems to be keeping distance from all the other vehicles, which is probably the only thing he can do. But again, making wide turns, hard cuts right there. A lot of other vehicles that just might not see this person. And this rider, not experienced enough to get out of the way or make those fast moves to keep himself safe.
Especially on those turns right there, you could definitely tell the lack of experience of this motorist on that motorbike, trying to make these turns, going really wide into the shared middle lane, and then trying to accelerate, kind of not knowing the capabilities of this vehicle and this motorbike, and kind of wobbly, as you mentioned, and jerky at times, but clearly a really dangerous situation right there, kind of going across lanes as we're watching, in this residential area. It's really concerning.
Like a 600? Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry about that. I was answering another question. The deal is here is I'm very hopeful that this rider will make his way maybe to a mall, maybe to some kind of parking garage, park that vehicle, park that bike, just get off of it, and just try to hide or do whatever they need to do that they think they can get away from law enforcement. Because the longer this bike is on the roadway, the more I am worried about an incident with it. There it is coming out the other side. And look at those wide cuts. If somebody was making a turn right there, that would have ended very poorly. And again, using all lanes, no respect for the direction of traffic, and add into the fact that not a very good rider. This is very dangerous.
It's very dangerous, and this person coming up close to the Glendale Galleria area, hopefully not going to involve more traffic and more innocent drivers not knowing what's happening, obviously seeing this motorbike going in and out of the lanes, weaving and making those wide turns, very dangerous. But also you wonder what the options are for police officers, how to stop this person. We obviously see a lot of pit maneuvers when it comes to vehicles and police chases like that in a pursuit of a vehicle. But in this case, you can tell just how open and exposed the rider is, the driver of that motorbike, and how dangerous it could be, any type of maneuver. You saw that black vehicle behind him, that's a law enforcement official, tried to kind of cut off the motorcycle at one point as he was exiting the freeway, making a really wide turn, trying to kind of pit him. But you have to be so careful because of the fact that the driver's so exposed, only wearing a helmet, and any little move, any little fall, any little collision can really cause a lot of damage and injury.
Definitely, and that is, you put into words all of my fears. I really mean that, Sandra. This thing is it just keeps going, and thank goodness it hasn't ended poorly. But still riding very erratically out here on these roadways, making our way in and out of the area. We're definitely still going to be. Now we're in Glazell Park, so LAPD might get involved with this. I'm not. And we have an LAPD ship actually over it right now. I don't know if they relieved Police 100, but it's definitely wrong side of the road, and these higher speeds again. It's just so dangerous. And the most of that danger, like you said, is going to be for that rider. That rider is the one that's putting themselves in the biggest vulnerability for injury, and it just continues out here. But as far as law enforcement, that one law enforcement officer right there, you really got to give him props and really trying to do what he can to bring this to an end. And a lot of people might be like, oh, he's going to hurt that guy if he pushes him up against a curb or something like that. You know what? A skinned knee, a bruised ankle, compared to loss of life or just maybe even something like being a cripple, definitely to do what you need to do to bring this to an end. But right now that rider is still keeping law enforcement just far enough away. These speeds staying dangerously high for the rider's skill level. There's no doubt about that. And again, we just continue to watch them passing other vehicles, using the wrong side of the road, center lane, and even now running some red lights. It just adds up. The danger just clicking,
Yeah.
and I just don't want this to end poorly.
Definitely escalating a little bit here as we don't know the rider's intention, the driver's intention. Clearly, we never know, but this comes to mind. I am reminded watching this because we don't often see the pursuit of a motorcyclist, right? So I have to say some of the worst pursuits, though, have been the pursuits of a motorcyclist. They end in a very, very bad way. Specifically, one that comes to mind is when there is a collision at the end of a pursuit and that person goes flying. And clearly you know what I'm talking about. You've done and seen a lot of these pursuits over the years, and those are the most horrific accidents that we've seen, the pursuit of a motorcyclist. Especially depending on how it ends, right? It's never a good scene. So clearly we want to hope and, that nobody gets hurt in this case, but clearly they are taking every precaution, right? Giving him a little space, monitoring the situation, but also the public needs to be safe and make sure that this person stays off the road.
Definitely, and, warning the public again. Look at this, wrong side of the road. This time really for no reason whatsoever. Just got onto the wrong side of the road, and now picking up a little bit more speed. I don't think, sometimes, Sandra, we see these chases and you're like, okay, there's a destination. You just got that feeling like they're going somewhere, like they're going to go and they're, like I said, to a mall or to a house or a neighborhood where they're going to try to, run and hide. But this bike just seems to be driving. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme to reason there. And it may be because that rider might not even really know where they are. Getting into the bike lane right there, that, buddy, that bike lane is not for you. And, Lee said the no for all to stand up there as he went through that intersection because it was a little bit of a dip. But I haven't seen any kind of really just riding the bike correctly, and that might actually be a good thing. These motorcycles, they work with clutches, they do overheat, they have the same issues as vehicles, and especially if they're not being driven correctly. So maybe we might see something where the bike might just kind of give up, but again, right there, it doesn't look like it. Picking up 60 miles an hour, and we're on surface streets out here, and it looks like we're passing over the LA River, so maybe we're getting back over to the 5. If he gets back on the freeway, we'll see. But I just want to see this guy stop. That's it.
Right.
Get off the bike, give it up, and put their hands up and just call it a day.
Right, we always want a safe ending where nobody gets hurt, no injuries, no innocent people involved, and even the suspect or the driver at this point, gets off the vehicle, off the motorbike safely. But clearly, as things escalate, you never know what happens, and under pressure, you never know what this person is thinking. So, Stu, do you see a lot of law enforcement, though, trailing this guy? Or is it just that one black vehicle?
You know what? I was kind of looking for him every now and then. They might have dropped out. We are well into Los Angeles right now. They're getting into downtown LA, Chinatown. It's just the LAPD ship, so there is no ground units right now. There are nobody on the ground chasing him. So basically, he is just running from his own demons. And, that could be a good thing because maybe if he's looking in his rearview mirror, he's not seeing the reds and blues, he's not hearing the sirens, he'll slow it down or think, okay, I've got enough distance between me and them that I can just get off this bike and do whatever I need to do. Definitely ran a red light right there. We're making our way into downtown where, today I got Dylan at the tiller of Skyfox. So I'm really kind of hopeful that we're going to be able to stay with it through downtown. Got another law enforcement, but basically going the other way. Let's see if he makes that U-turn. It does look, no, maybe not, because that's the thing too. A lot of times LAPD, they're going to look at something like this and they're going to weigh it. And policies, I don't know the policies. I know that it is up to their sergeant or watch commander, but for the most part, LAPD will let things go to keep everybody safe. And it looks like we're getting back onto the freeway, so we're not getting into the downtown area, but definitely a lot of traffic. And let's see what happens with this motorcycle and all this traffic.
Yeah, definitely precarious when he's making turns. That's the real scary part because he's cutting in front of cars making those turns or going extremely wide because he doesn't have quite the command of a vehicle like this,
That
a
skill set.
motorcycle. Yeah, knowing how to drive this thing. So very erratic when you're on something like that, on those two wheels, but going fast, and we have no idea where he's going. He's kind of doing a loop-de-loo at this point, but traffic picking up too, it looks like.
Definitely a little bit more traffic. We're in the downtown area. You guys can read it right there, but we're right where all the big buildings are, the government buildings, and still just kind of driving very erratically down there, using that, trying to stay in that center area, which may or may not be better, because if he's going to stay off to the right side, he has that possibility of somebody making a right turn. Going to be going right underneath us, Dylan, right underneath us. And again, picking up some speed. But right now, no law enforcement underneath him. They do have a helicopter above him. But, you know, that's the thing, too, is like a lot of times people are going to be like, oh, yeah, of course they're going to hear that helicopter. I have not seen this person with that helmet on. You got to think about that as well. Look up once. So I'm not sure why this person's still driving so erratically. I'm still very hopeful that it's something he's going to click and is going to be like, okay, I'm parking the bike, I'm on foot, I'm just going to try to hide. But right now, we can see it, keeping up those higher speeds, especially for downtown Los Angeles, and definitely kind of staying in that area where the government buildings are. You know, we're very close to City Hall, police headquarters, and things like that. So we're going to keep an eye on it. And again, you said it earlier, Sandra, he's basically just making loops out here. We're making big giant figure eights on these streets.
And I saw those pedestrians walking across the street having no idea what's happening, but the motorcyclist turned right in front of them. Thankfully, no one was hurt in that case. It wasn't too close a call, but you just wonder, you know, how much closer is he going to get? How much more erratic are those turns going to be as he's handling that motorcycle that he's not familiar with, it seems. The good thing is, and the unusual thing is, that he does have a helmet. So was this pre-planned? Was the helmet sitting there? A lot of questions here. You know, how did he start it up? Clearly, we don't know also how long this is going to go for. Does he have a full tank of gas? And where he's going at this point. But does he even know that he's being trailed? Maybe he thinks that he's free and clear and trying to figure out where to go. But
he could.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like, it looks like he's making some decisions here. It looks like we actually pulled into an apartment building. This is going to be, what is the name of this? This is the one that caught fire a while ago. Picasso. Is it Picasso?
Oh,
I think it's the Picasso.
Okay.
And,
right by the freeway right there.
It just made a turn. Yeah, he made a turn into that parking garage. So I'm going to stay a little bit wider, not for problems of him being injured, but to see if I see anybody running through the courtyard areas or acting unusual. That motorcycle actually had a helmet attached to it on the side, so I'm wondering maybe there was just like we were talking about, just convenient that he was able to, and how did he get into that parking garage? I've ridden my bike past here many a times, and I know that these are, electric gates. So maybe it was just an opportunity. He saw it, opening, so he went ahead and jumped in there. But law enforcement definitely knows. LAPD is talking about it right now. They actually have some units nearby. I'm not sure what they're discussing over here, because I know for a fact that he wound up, he went into this building. But at any rate, we're going to keep an eye on it and see what law enforcement's going to do.
That's a huge complex. Easy for someone to hide, to get lost, to kind of, wait it out, if you will, right? There's so many places that that person can be to kind of escape, shall we say, from this situation, if in fact that motorcyclist went inside and is underneath of the parking structure right now. But a lot of black and whites around, but there's just so many places that this driver could escape to, run out from. We don't know if they're holed up in someone's apartment, because that complex is big.
Yes, very big. And if this person lives there and they know where they're going, or basically just put the bike somewhere and then made their way over to an apartment, there might be an opportunity to review some sort of surveillance tapes. But who knows? I mean, that could be days from now, and also how much effort is law enforcement going to put into this if they recover the motorcycle, and maybe they're just going to say, okay, we're going to wait for whoever to come and claim it. And if not, then, it's their loss. But right now we do see law enforcement, but we haven't seen anybody making an effort to go into the building. So possibly they're getting the message that to the ground, to the units on the ground, it's not worth the chase. This person basically is now probably off the bike, and this has, come to the public. The safety of the public is now safe. So maybe that's what's going on. But as far as LAPD, they are nearby, but I've yet to actually see any of them make an effort to get inside that building.
Yeah, let's hope that's the case, that the threat to the public is contained at this point. LAPD on it with those cruisers surrounding the building right there. Let them get back to work at what they do best. Stu, you doing what you do best. Thank you so much for being on top of that, and your crew in Skyfox. For now, you will keep your eye on that. We'll have so much more later this evening on Fox 11 News. But for now, let's return to regular programming.
Los Angeles in the first quarter of this year.
This is Eliana, if you can, just for a second here. We want to wrap things up here. We will, of course, have more for you on the news at 3, but we will also be streaming on our NBC Los Angeles news channel. We will continue to monitor it there.
Here? He's really, this movie, being working with him, he literally is one of my favorite actors, and then he wasn't.
And now we are hearing that there are some law enforcement that is vectoring in to try and get some ground units in there. It's very likely LAPD with maybe the assistance of Glendale if they get any officers down there. It's pretty far out of their jurisdiction to try and now search this complex for that motorcycle.
All right, Mark, thank you so much. We want to thank our viewers for watching KCAL News at Noon, an extended version. And remember, the news continues right now streaming on CBS News Los Angeles. We'll see you right back here at 4 o'clock.
Bow, bow, bow.
On February 25th, 2022,
Thank you.